All right, we'll officially call tonight's regular board meeting to order. We thank all of you for attending. Renee, if you would show all except Nancy Kraft present, and if you would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have the pleasure of recognizing some extraordinary folks tonight. At this time, we would like to call Miss Cindy Ryan forward.
All right. Well, Miss Ryan, the board salutes Riverside Elementary teacher Cindy Ryan. Cindy chairs the Southern Indiana Suicide Prevention Coalition and was instrumental in providing information to the Greater Clark secondary schools. Cindy was also selected to serve as a field advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. She is one of 4 advocates in the state of Indiana. Field advocates are selected to serve in the volunteer role for a full 2-year congressional term to represent the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's mission to inspire others to raise their community's awareness about suicide and help spread the word that prevention is possible. Cindy lost her 16-year-old nephew to suicide in 2010, and her service to the community is to honor his memory. The board salutes Cindy Ryan.
Thank you. Congratulations.
We have some fine folks here tonight from Southeast Christian Church. If Sarah Flannery, Bonnie Epperson, and Bill Weedman would please come forward.
The board salutes Southeast Christian Church for their infinite amount of support for the Parkwood Elementary. Over the past 2 years, Southeast Christian has provided monetary support and volunteer support for the school, including landscaping, back-to-school breakfast for teachers, sponsoring the school's fall festival, providing Christmas gifts and food baskets for almost 100 families, recruited volunteers for the 3-2-1 reads, donated hundreds of hygiene items to distribute at Family Literacy Night, purchased a washing machine and a dryer, and most recently donated $25,000 for the purchase of the new playground equipment, and also volunteered the time installing the equipment. Community partnerships are vital to the success of our schools, students, and families, and Greater Clark County Schools salutes Southeast Christian Church for their commitment to our corporation.
And if you would choose to leave, we understand. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. All right. Approval of agenda. You want to do that, Ernie? Approval of the agenda?
I don't approve of agenda.
You sure? We'd appreciate it if you do that once. I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Mr. Pavey, any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? 5-1. Thank you. We have minutes from previous meetings. Need a motion to approve? We'll take all those at once unless there's a objection.
I so move.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there a second?
Second motion.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Any discussion? All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. Do we have any public comments tonight? All right. So we'll move right on to the consent agenda. And unless there's an objection, we'll take items 1 through 5.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Satterley.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Pavey. Any discussion? All in favor? 6-0. Next, our gifts to buildings. Mr. Satterley, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, 'cause I don't think I have technical difficulty over here. Now, once again, you can just show that the community really reached out and helped by it's covering a page, so where they can't even show it all on one screen. A couple that stand out: Jonathan Jennings, the Seif Foundation. I believe that's the Seif, isn't it? For the Charlestown Foundation, $1,100. Various. Then when you get down towards Maple, you got the PTO for $5,700. And then Jefferson County, this one stood out because I had to read it twice. Jefferson County Public Education donated $1,000 to Pleasant Ridge, which gave us a grand total of $12,800 again from the community. And once again, without the support, our budget would have more trouble than it already has. So, thanks to everybody.
Motion to approve? Mr. Satterley, thank you. Is there a second? Mr. White, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Detention Center, Dr. Mallon.
Board, we want to recommend the approval of the Joint Educational Services Agreement for students placed at Clark County Juvenile Detention Center. This is a contract that is a continuation of a project that started about 6 years ago. It's a joint service agreement servicing Floyd, Harrison, and Clark County, and provides services at the detention center. So this project funds a teacher's salary.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Satterley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pavey. Any discussion? All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. Next, we have some first readings on some policy revisions. Ms. Lewis.
Thank you and good evening. At the last meeting that you had, we brought for discussion purposes a series of policies that we're working on revising, and this evening they're being presented for first reading, and this means that no action is needed. We'll bring them next month for your actual vote and second reading, but just wanted to run through them real quickly again for you. The adult support groups, policy 1260, we're just clarifying a typo that's been in the policy for a while and kind of defining in a little more detail what we consider support groups. You have the policy, the changes or the additions are highlighted in yellow, the deletions are strike-throughs. Any questions on that policy? The next one is pupil discipline 5144. This one, the main purpose is to delete corporal punishment as one of the disciplinary actions. We also, in reviewing the Indiana Code on the types of disciplinary actions that can be initiated for students, we changed the language to update it with what is in Indiana Code. So you'll see that as yellow highlights. Deletions are pretty much duplicates, and they are in strike-through. Any questions on that one? The next one is community service for students, and we put this one's going to have a policy number 5144.5 because it kind of tracks the discipline policy. It just gives kind of the details on how community service projects could be initiated in our schools. It kind of sets out what the process is, how many hours a student could be assigned as a disciplinary action into a community service program. We would also make sure that if any location they were working at would have the proper criminal history background checks, because we do that with anybody that we have in a volunteer standpoint with our students. So that's the one that would kind of accompany our pupil discipline.
Okay, I have some comments on that one.
Okay.
I would like to, again, raise my objections to this policy because it says we may approve this policy. I'm unclear as to how the policy came to light. Did we find a way that maybe one of the neighboring School Corporations has already implemented this, because I have great concerns again about the background check, the problem with the principal and additional burdens on them to oversee this project, knowing where the children are in the community, the fact that we are not the court system, not the juvenile justice system, we're educators, the schools.
This is the process set out by Indiana Code 20-33-8-24. So if you're going to, and a school corporation doesn't have to have community service as one of its disciplinary options, but if you choose to have community service as one of your disciplinary options, and we've had different, especially at the high school level, the different principals have talked at times about it would be nice to have kiddos do community service. The law sets out, and this was taken straight out of the law sets out the process that you have to go through for selecting the entity that you'd be doing business with, the number of hours. So this is just pulled straight out of Indiana Code.
Ms. Christensen, and Mr. Pavey and I met with Dr. Mellon to review tonight's agenda. Some of those same concerns were raised. So if I could, I'd like Dr. Mellon to kind of walk through the same process that he did with us that morning and kind of give a deeper explanation.
Thank you.
I think the focus of community service piece really boils down to our interest in expanding our alternative education program. And so it is our hope that no later than the start of the second semester that we'll be able to expand our services to students related to alternative education, students that are struggling in the regular school environment and placed in a setting where perhaps part of their day obviously relates to academics to try to keep them on track, but another part of their day would be out in the community working in a partnership arrangements with organizations in our community that need help, need assistance. And what would happen is with our alternative education program, we're working on staffing that we're not talking about increasing staff in any way, but moving or maneuvering our faculty around to be able to provide that level of service to our students. So it wouldn't be an unfair burden on a building level principal or assistant principal. This primarily would allow us to use through alternative education using current staffing that would be reassigned into alternative environment and put students out in the community with partnerships with people who need that help and assistance. And our individuals assigned to the alternative program would be supervising those students. And there are evaluations or critiques that could be finalized by the people who were benefiting. It's something that's been done other places with great success, and the people in the community need the help, they need the service, especially during school days. A lot of times this would occur maybe part of the day the student is in academic coursework, and there's another part of the regular student day where the student is out working with different organizations. And a lot of times these are nonprofit organizations that need a little bit of help and assistance that have difficulty finding that assistance. And those individuals are students involved. They gain a lot from the experience because no matter how difficult life seems for them, there always seems to be other people in our community that life's a little bit more difficult for. So this is just policy that enables that to occur. I don't see it as something that's going to be used on a regular basis at a building level by our principals. I don't see that because they don't have the time or the resources to manage it. But we can make it happen in an alternative setting for for high school students.
Who will oversee the community service as far as what agencies are chosen for the students to work with?
Well, I think it'll be all of us at the central office level. Mr. Hare is really driving this initiative for alternative education. And what we'll do is part of the process is to go out and find those opportunities in the community, make people aware that we have that ability, and to set up formal partnership arrangements with those organizations, so that when we have students that that are a good fit, they've earned the opportunity to go out and have that experience, that we can place them. And we would have people in the alternative program that would help place them, communicate with those agencies out in the community, make sure that the student is there, fulfilling their community service obligations and making sure that we're evaluating that student too in case there were any issues or concerns. So we don't want to put an unfair burden on the organization. We want to make sure we're providing help and assistance to those organizations in our community.
Okay.
And they have to be not-for-profit organizations, and the assignment to community service is subject to the parent's approval.
I had just
That's what it's called.
another question. Some of her concerns were my concerns also, so you've answered a lot of questions. But under Section 3D, it says periodic reports from the nonprofit organization to the principal and the student's parents or guardian. What's periodic? I mean, if you're doing 120 hours of service, is it twice in that time or once every 5 hours of service? Or what kind of, what would be, I think that's pretty vague as to how often that nonprofit would have to report on the status of what's going on.
What we would want to do is provide a document to the nonprofit, and generally it's a weekly progress report that they would provide to us. So we'd give them a simple document on a weekly basis that they would complete. Wouldn't be overly time consuming, but it would basically give us an indication of how well that student was performing. Were they there on time? Were they putting quality work into it? Were they respectful to others? So we create sort of a rubric for our students, but it probably would be on a weekly basis.
Okay. I just didn't see that detail in here, and I want to make sure. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Dr. Millen, just one clarifying point. In your experience, what type of organizations are we talking about? I mean, just some examples of, I guess, what make us all feel better if we know it's a United Way or something like
Red
that.
Cross, United Way. It has to be a valid not-for-profit
Food pantries, a lot of times food pantries and things of that nature.
Since you brought this up, I've had 3 churches approach me and ask me, and I told them they'd have to see Mr. Hare if the policy came into place, but want to know if the kids could help feed the homeless during lunch when they're serving lines. That's what I kind of see out of it. But
I think that again, it's developing a partnership. And what does the organization need? We want to make sure it's a positive experience for our students. This isn't putting a ball and chain on their ankles and send them out in the community and have them drag that ball and chain around. Our whole point is that all of our students have tremendous value. Sometimes they just need to be redirected and refocused. So we want to put them in positions where they can be of help to our community and hopefully gain some self-esteem and self-worth through that experience. And that's what I've seen through these experiences. And with not putting an unfair burden on the organization, we want that organization to feel, thank you, I needed that help, I needed that support, I needed that 3 hours a day or 2.5 hours a day. That was very helpful to us. And for the student to gain and benefit from that experience, so they come back and they realize, my life, as difficult as it might seem at times, there are other people in the community that have it worse, and I want to help others. I like doing that. I feel a sense of worth by doing it. So that's what I've seen, whether it's working for different United Way agencies or food pantries or churches or whatever it might be. That's what I've seen from it. I've seen that happen to kids. And so this policy would allow that.
Who would have the responsibility if, God forbid, something happened to a student during the time that we have them in that program? Would it be the agency? Would it be the Greater Clark?
The policy says that the nonprofit organization has to provide sufficient liability insurance to us at the time they enter into an agreement with us for the services in case there is an accident or anything.
I was thinking on a little stronger line there, not a cut finger, but mixing our students, even with parental support, with some of the agencies and I live in the downtown district, so I would have great concern with some students mixing throughout the day, serving lunches and all, as to who is overseeing the student at the end of the day. If something happened to that student, who's liable? And when I say liable, with all due respect, agencies do help those that are less fortunate, there's no doubt about it. But there's also a darker side to who gets the help, and I know that from firsthand experience in my district. So I do have great concerns and would like to know what agencies and who would approve the agencies that the students would be working with. Church site-based, it's very vague.
And I think that information, this is a policy that allows us to set up protocols for a program. And once we set up the protocols and the procedures and the agency implement this program and get willing participants. But, the liability is going to fall, number one, to the agency, because they're going to have to designate somebody that's going to supervise. We'll know who those persons are that are doing the supervision. If they fail, then they're negligent in their supervision. They have to have the liability insurance that's going to guarantee from a cut finger to no telling what. And, always a school corporation's a deep pocket. They can do us too.
That's a concern,
but our liability will be able to say, we're required certain protocols to be set up in order to implement this program.
And in order for a supervisor to be in that position, they would have to be like any other of our volunteers or coaches. They would have to have that background check before they would have any interaction with our students.
That'd be part of the protocol.
Safety would be first and foremost. If there's any potential chance that, we want to be very sensitive to risk factors. That's not our point. We want to put kids in positive, productive environments where they can be helpful to others. And also, Mr. Hare, we would expect, as this alternative education expansion approach is developed, is that he'll bring that forward to this board, and he will be able to specify there's a lot of aspects and a lot of elements to what we're doing with our alternative education program. And so this is just a small piece of it. But it's something that I've been around for many years and something that I've only seen positive impact. I've never, knock on wood, but I've not seen any negatives to what we're doing as long as we're doing our due diligence and placing kids properly.
If this is supposed to be a disciplinary alternate, then, what are the kids doing? It sounds like to me the things that you're trying to do are very positive for them and all those things. And generally, if you're going out and you're washing dishes or you're digging ditches or whatever that you're doing for a disciplinary action, are not in most instances set up to be positive. Now, the special ed kids used to, they had programs where the kids would go out and they would go to work at some place, and it was always a positive situation that they were in. That we had DECA programs that the kids went out and they worked in different businesses and they helped it, and those were always positive situations. And if we're going to do a positive situation, I think that's wonderful and it's fine. But if we're going to call it a disciplinary action or whatever, I think there may be some questions about whether this is a disciplinary action or whether it's a positive reinforcement program for something along the line. Or is this a reward for good behavior, or is this a punishment for bad behavior?
Sometimes, Ernie, sometimes what happens with these programs is at the high school level, like currently our students are in a high school program half a day. And so what happens is, and let's take a kid that is a disciplinary issue, and he's placed over in our alternative program for half of a school day. Well, what happens is when that half a day is over, he leaves, he goes home, he's free to do whatever he wants to do. That makes a lot of parents uncomfortable. And so if it's a behavior student, a discipline issue, then what you do is you say part of the discipline is he's not going to have freedom the other half of the day. In fact, we're going to put him in a position where he has to go out and be in a structured environment, and he has to help others. So he's not going to have the freedom. Now, the other side of the coin is alternative kids may be placed there because they're struggling academically. So it's not just a behavioral piece. They may be not able to be successful in a regular school environment. They're struggling. They may need extra help and assistance. So again, you may have situations where students would be able, it's not a disciplinary issue. They're going out to fulfill a time obligation, again, to benefit from the experience. So it's not always I think kids, you need to be firm, and you need to set the expectations for them. As you know, you've been in the business a long time. But there are kids that need to be refocused, and they need to see that they have a positive value, because a lot of these kids they don't understand that, and so that's what I see happening with these programs.
Well, as far as alternate programs, I think we should probably have some alternate programs, but I think we should provide a program or curriculum that we should provide a curriculum in the schools that meets the kids' needs, so that they don't need an alternative program, and they survive and they're successful in the schools, and they do things like go to Prosser, go to vocational auto tech program, go to the building program, go to welding, different programs that we have in the thing where they're a part of the school rather than being out and sent in half day. I've seen kids that were running the streets. They would go a half day and then run the streets half day, which to me was not a very good alternative education program. But that's what we had. That's what we implemented. To me, like I said, we should have a program that is a very controlled environment, provides them with a situation where if they need academic catch-up work, they get a chance to do academic catch-up work, and you further do those things. But to put them out on the out for about half the day, that doesn't account as much as an alternative program to me. But again, if you have educational programs where the kids are in the schools, which is where they're supposed to be to begin with, that meets their needs, and they find stuff like the auto tech program. A lot of the kids who go to the auto tech program and a lot of the other programs are not in the best situation to begin with. Some of them are kind of referred there because of it's here or that, and of course at those programs we have teachers who are well trained, who motivate, who do all the other things, and a lot of kids have a lot of success by doing those types of things. And so that's just part of the situation. Now this one here, if they're going out and they're going this stuff and they're seeing other people and they're seeing what it's like to work and they get along with those people, that's fine. But if we're going to call it a punishment, I don't think that fits the punishment. If it is a punishment, then and you tell them to go dig a ditch and they say, well, I'm not digging any ditches, then that doesn't provide much of the situation either. So I think it's a fairly good idea, but I think it just kind of needs to be cleared up as to what it is going to be. Is it going to be for encouraging success and doing those types of things, or is it a punishment situation that we use instead of going to a suspension or in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension or type of stuff?
One of the things that's happened, the commitment's been made by this school corporation not to expel students. That's a commitment that's a very unique commitment around the state of Indiana, is to not to expel kids. And so what we must do, if we're not going to expel them from school for various behaviors, then we must put them in different environments where they're not around the regular population at times. So it's very unique. It's very individualized. Good alternative education takes the student. It says, okay, what is your situation? Whether it's academic, it's behavioral, what is your situation? What's your circumstance? What do you need academically? What do you need behaviorally? The same program may not fit every kid. There might be a situation that occurs where a student is a senior and he needs more credits to possibly graduate. So now do we organize his day or her day so that there's more academics involved in an alternative environment so they can graduate? So I guess it's not a one-size-fits-all deal. We've said we're not going to expel kids, which is great. We're going to take every child, we're going to keep them in our fold, we're going to take care of them, and we're going to place them in positions where they can be successful, academically, behaviorally, and so on. So this is just, community service is just one option in the grand scheme of alternative education. It's not to say that every child automatically will be placed in the community service. It will be the right situation. It will be the right fit for that individual student. Our goal is we want every student to graduate with a diploma, and not everyone's going to get there the same way. And so that's what, I guess I want you to understand, that's community service is just one piece, one tool in the toolkit that could apply to certain kids, but will not necessarily apply to every student. And I look forward to Mr. Hare coming forward with our more specific plan of attack, because over the next year and a half, I think you're going to see something in terms of alternative education that has not been seen in this school corporation over the next year and a half, and we look forward to bringing that your way so we can help our kids.
For the sake of time, since it's a first reading, if you have any other concerns, questions, comments, deletions, additions, please email those to Dr. Mellon between now and the next reading so we can move forward one way or another. Thank you. Next policy.
The next policy is Policy 6143. It's a new policy, Indiana Assessment System, Testing Security. And again, this is the one that's required by the State Board of Education. It's set out in their administrative rule by the Indiana Administrative
questions on that one?
at the November meeting.
No questions? Okay.
The next one is 9300, and this is regular and special meetings, and this is a revision to an existing policy that during the discussion there were some questions raised, and so I've highlighted the areas that were questioned in blue. The changes that were presented before under discussion were items highlighted in yellow, and then the strike-throughs are the items that are being deleted. First of all, on the meeting, we have 2 meetings a month. The first meeting of the month, we would have public comments on agenda items. We had recommended taking out public comments on non-agenda items on both the regular meeting and the special meeting. Those are highlighted in blue. But we did have a request by Becca at the last meeting to keep those in. So I've highlighted those in blue. I have not done strike-throughs. I'll need a consensus from the board as to whether or not you want to continue to have public comments on non-agenda items. That's why it's highlighted in blue. And then we had recommended that the provision on special meetings being held at school locations on even months and at the administration building on odd months be modified. We were going to take that out and just have all the meetings here in this building, mainly for our internet access purposes, but it was recommended at the discussion meeting to maybe implement 4 times per the school year. The special meeting would be held at a school location. The remaining meetings would be held at the admin building. And I think what the thought process was that we would, in the 4 meetings, try to have one out in the Charlestown, New Washington area. Try to bring one in to the downtown area, and then out into our like Parkwood area, and then even up to our Charlestown area. So we were trying to spread those 4 meetings around so we'd hit all the geographic areas of the school corporation, but just not be doing them like every other meeting. And we'd be looking at, and we're hoping that we'll have our internet access in our schools, our Wi-Fi type of access in our schools, even the elementary schools. So, we're working on that. But we thought maybe a compromise rather than just keeping all the meetings here locally in this building would be to do the 4 times per year. And you all would set where those meetings would be and when they would be with the assistance from the superintendent. So that's what we have. And then we also talked about moving, actually putting gifts to buildings in as a separate action item, separate items above the action items. So I guess the discussion this evening is public comments on non-agenda items. Do you want them included or not included?
Mr. Gilbert, let's just go around the table so she can get a consensus of whether or not to move forward with that.
Of course.
You want them included or?
Of course.
Okay. Ms. Christensen?
I want them included.
I would like to see them left in there, yes.
Okay. Mr. Satterley?
I don't think they need to be in both meetings, no.
Mr. Pavey?
I would agree. Not at both meetings.
Okay.
Because, the special meeting we talked about is just information delivery, and, that needs to be focused on information delivery, and I don't think that that's a good place for it.
And that's kind of my thought process is there is a process to bring this concerns all the way up the chain of command before it gets to the board. One meeting a month is enough. I don't think the second meeting should be a platform just to speak. We're here for a different purpose that night.
Well, in the years that we've done this, it has not been abused.
Never been abused. Never.
Very seldom does anyone speak on that, but if someone does care enough that they would like to speak, I'd like for them to have an opportunity to do so, because that's how we know what's going on and what's happening. There's no action taken. There's generally very little discussion that takes place after the thing, but it does make us aware that there are some things that are troubling some people in the community. They follow the same rules. They get about 3 minutes to speak. They go through what's supposed to do. And any time that we're going to try to get information from our if we're going to be aware of what the community's needs are and what's going on, one of the ways of finding out is for them to have the opportunity to come and speak to you about it. So I think it's important that they do though, that they do those things, and if they do that, and that's the same way with, I don't think that the meetings out that we go out into the communities are very, have that much. But guess what? Every once in a while there's something that comes out of them, so therefore we should go. Same situation as this. I don't think it's a lot of work, it's a lot of headaches, and to go out to the other buildings and do these things. But one, if there's some people who show up and have an opportunity to say some things, I think it's wonderful that they do so. And the same sort of situation here, that one, if they show up, they go through the thing, they sign up, they do what's going to go on, they come and follow the rules. I think it doesn't hurt us one bit, and in fact, it helps us because people think that we're available and we're willing to listen to them in a variety of different formats.
Well, Mrs. Kraft isn't here, so we're probably going to need to email or call her to get her opinion on this as well. I'm going to suggest a compromise of sorts, because I understand that all of us are available via phone call, email, personal contact. At any time if somebody has a concern, they can reach us that way. However, I also understand that there's a protocol for when someone has a issue, that they shouldn't just come to the board. There's a hierarchy, building level principal, assistant superintendent. So what I would suggest is, if we're going to have someone come and speak on a non-agenda item, that we should have a check of some sorts in place to make sure they have gone through the hierarchy before they come before the board. Because normally a comment on a non-agenda item is not something real positive or happy. So I just feel like people should have to try to get their problem resolved privately before they bring it to a public meeting.
Well, and
So that's my suggestion. That's one board member's suggestion.
I'd just like to remind the board it's not always complaints. We've heard some good news in those extra 3 minutes that we allow somebody to step in front of us, and I always welcome the opportunity to hear from the community. So with that being said, let's not take the negative and it's always bad news. It's not always bad news.
I can't remember a time where somebody's come to speak on a non-agenda item and it was something positive. But
we had a lady come and talk to us about the U.S. Constitution not too far back.
That wasn't a non-agenda item.
It wasn't an agenda item.
They were part of the program. They were part of...
Nope, she stood in front of us separately.
Oh.
Well, Christine, I like your idea. I think that's fine if they follow the protocol, went through the chain of command. More than willing to hear. But if not, then I think they should be referred back. And that's no different than if you get that phone call or email. The first question from a board member should be, have you spoke to the teacher? Have you spoke to the principal? Have you spoke? And if you haven't, well, you should. And the same thing here, rather than jumping and saying, well, I want to sign up and talk to you.
Well, I think most people do that. I think that, the calls I get, I say, have you talked to this and this and that? And they say yes. I say, well, it's 256-624. You're always welcome to send them to me. But most of the people follow situations, and I think one of the reasons why we have very few of these speaking on non-agenda items is because somebody in the chain of command talks to them and works something through to begin with before they get to us when they have those things. I know that there'll be one that's there, and then all of a sudden it's not there. Well, I know what's happened. Somebody has talked to them.
Yeah.
And I like to say, I think it's just nice communication. It doesn't happen very often, but if it does have an opportunity to do so, I think that'd be fine. And I don't have a problem with what Christina said, that if they go through that, because basically it's still up to them. If they get through talking to Dr. Mellon, they don't like what Dr. Mellon said, come on. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with that. Other than, like I say, we're making them jump through some hoops. And I don't like to make people jump through hoops. I think they all be able to voice their opinion and say what they mean.
But they can voice their opinion to us individually as well, Ernie. Well,
they do. They do. But if I get somebody that talks to me, I don't always call you guys and tell you that.
Sure.
A lot of times we'll handle this ourselves. And sometimes people would like to speak to the whole group. And I've had people at different times who have called and said, I can do this, and I say, well, you're more than welcome to call the rest of them, but I'll talk to them about it because it's something felt was important, and I'll call and talk to them. But you're more than welcome to call the whole bunch if you want to. But if not, you know, I'll be glad to take this call and handle it for you and go through all these things and that do those things. And sometimes people would say, well, I would like to talk to the whole group, and I said, you're more than welcome to do so. Please do that. And this is an opportunity for you to do the same thing. Like I said, it's just communication, and we're always interested in communicating with people. And this is an opportunity to communicate with people. It's a good idea, communicating with people.
What we signed up for.
Would you,
But you said you agreed with Christina on
I
the
do.
checklist. So
I can go through
that's
that.
the one part. He
I can
agreed
go
with you.
through that.
Well, and I think the point we're trying to make is if it has been through all the filters that it needs to go through, then it can become an agenda item. And then, obviously, that's every meeting. And so that's my concern, is that let's make sure we go through the protocol, because we don't want people in here trying to get something fixed with the board that could be handled with the principal or the teacher. And so, but if it's bigger than that, if it's affecting a large group of people and it's gone through the command and they haven't got the answer they need from Dr. Mellon or from Travis or whatever, then we just make it an agenda item, and then certainly they can talk on it, and certainly action can be taken on it. So that's where I'm coming from in the interest of time.
Well,
I take the calls.
An action item, if it becomes an agenda item, then there is action taken. And generally on these things, there's no action taken. That we can listen to them and we can make further referrals of whatever is necessary without having to make any decisions on it. We can pass it back to Dr. Mellon for further discussion of what's happened or whatever's involved, and then maybe at some point it does become an action item, or maybe this time, then when Dr. Mellon goes through and talks to them, it works out and they get it taken care of. Like I say, it's just a matter of communication. It's simple, it's easy.
It's transparency from this board that we're willing to hear anything that the public has to tell us, to share, to help us to do our job better. I just don't have a problem with it.
I haven't seen it being abused personally. You know, there's occasions when issues are hot, but that's rare, and I'm certainly willing to give up my time to listen to them. So I have no problem with leaving it as an open forum for the 3 minutes.
Both meetings, you want to keep it on for both meetings? Or
I could see what Mark said about doing it at 1 meeting a month. I can see that in the interest of, that's still giving everyone an opportunity to speak. But I would prefer, you can ask them to go through a protocol, but I don't want to suppress anybody's right to come and speak to this board in the end.
And I'm fine if the majority wants to go that route. That's fine. That was just my personal feelings, is that I'd like to see it go through the chain of the protocol, and then if we need to make it an agenda item, certainly we can, and then they can always speak. And that's the 1 meeting, but the special meeting, we usually have to cover a lot of information, and it's getting us prepared for the next meeting when we will be taking action on a lot of items, and that's where I was. But I mean, if the consensus is we'll stay with 2, then I'm fine with staying with 2.
Okay.
So.
Can we have an idea? Do we want to stay
I'm
with
fine
2?
with 1 meeting as long as it's open. Yes.
One.
Regular meeting?
The regular meeting.
Regular
Yes.
meeting. So do I have
Ms. Christensen?
4-2?
No, I'd like to hear from them at either meeting.
Mr. Gilbert?
I'm just saying any time too. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like 4 of us are in favor of continuing to have it, but at 1 meeting versus 2.
That's what I will draft. Thank you.
Thank you all for your input. All right. Thank you, Sandy. And those will come to us at the first meeting in November. Thank you. Which will be November 7th, Wednesday. Okay. That's a change to our regular meeting, so make sure and note that, everybody. November 7th, Wednesday. Yeah, we'll be a little busy. Some of us will be a little busy on the 6th. All right. Next is Title I Academic Improvement Coordinator.
Board, we've made a few little changes that we want to just bring to your attention. I think are beneficial for students, and I'd like Mrs. Schellenberg to give you some details.
Just wanted to briefly remind you that Indiana has applied for and received what's called a flexibility waiver as a result of No Child Left Behind. And when we were under the full guidelines of No Child Left Behind, part of the sanctions, if you will, were that a district would be considered an LEA improvement or local education agency improvement if one or more of their schools were in school improvement. Therefore, from that sanction, we would have to take 10% of our total allocation, which is typically about $2.5 million off, so about $250,000 to address professional development needs in the corporations and such. With the flexibility waiver, that was changed where we no longer have to do that. The money is to be allocated back in the schools. So what that really, the impact it was for us as a district is we're now serving 13 of our 18 schools with Title I services. With that, we've now expanded services into secondary schools, and in kind of keeping with the state's revision of their model, we've adjusted the Title I intervention teacher job description to reflect an academic improvement coordinator because of the work that's going to be required in terms of data analysis, data support, and collection with the state's A through F grading model. So we have, actually we have about 25 people in the 13 schools that are serving in these roles. So we wanted to make the job description match what their actual work is now. Reflection.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Satterley, any discussion or questions for Ms. Schellenberg? All in favor? Thank you, Amy. Job description for the payroll manager.
Board, we currently have a payroll supervisor, and that individual will be retiring here shortly. And what we're proposing is to change to a project manager. It's at a salary schedule that's less than the payroll supervisor. We still think it's a fair level of compensation for that individual, but it will result in a slight savings to our general fund. And so we'd still have a person that oversees it, but it would be paid as a manager and not a supervisor, and the salary schedule would be at a less of a salary than it currently is. So I recommend to the board that you consider approving that.
Move to approve.
Mr. Satterley, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any discussion? Dr. Mellon, I just want to be clear. When our payroll supervisor retires, then we'll be left with 2 payroll employees.
Left with 3.
Left with 3.
Mm-hmm.
One of them will then move into this payroll manager position.
Right. That our intention is that we currently have 4 people in payroll, 1 who is a supervisor. When the individual retires, we would not replace that position. We would not replace a position and change a supervisor to a manager. So it would result in a savings of a position plus some savings in terms of the title. Maybe about $50,000 to our school corporation.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you. 6-0. Next we have baseball, Charlestown High School.
The ongoing epic saga of the baseball and softball fields at Charlestown. I think some significant progress has been made with the fields. A lot of work has been done. But what we have found is that not all the work that was required to get those fields up to speed has been completed. So we've worked with Mid-South Baseball, and we want to enter into a contract with them. And the contract would stipulate that all the work that needs to be done would be completed, and the field would be ready to go. The fields would be ready to go by next season. We feel good progress has been made, but the changes would amount to about $9,200. It would be paid for by the athletic department at Charlestown High School. But we want to make sure we have a contract in place, which has not been done in the past as it relates to this, and make sure that the fields are done to the level of quality and standard that they need to be completed. And so a lot of work has been done to get to this point. We finally feel like we're ready to finally get the fields ready to go for our kids. So I'd like to recommend that the contract for services with Mid-South Baseball be approved as presented.
Move to accept the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Satterley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Pavey. Any discussion?
When we went through all this before, is this $9,200 in addition? I'm sorry, I didn't read this as well as I should have because I missed it. We made an agreement back last spring whatever it was, May, June, whatever, that we were going to do this. We would pay so much money, Charlestown Athletic Department would pay so much money that the field would be put in the condition, water sprinklers, and all the stuff that's necessary to do that. Okay, is this $9,200 in addition to that contract?
Let me.
That wasn't a contract, that's the problem.
Let me have Mr. Hare, who's been involved in the daily.
It wasn't a contract. That was sent to the board in the form of estimates, and it was not a contract. I have spent an extensive amount of time researching this and talking to both parties. According to Mid-South, they are under the impression that they led us to believe very clearly that that was not going to complete the field. Basically, for the board, so you'll know what happened, they brought in excess dirt for the infield, and then they sodded the infield. So they brought a couple of inches of dirt into the infield, sodded the infield. They went out and did the same thing to the outfield and raised the outfield. In doing so, it made the base paths lower, and that additional material was not part of the scope of the original project, and it was not a contract, at least none that we can find, that was signed or brought to this board. The original estimate was twice of what we're asking, so we have gone back and we've negotiated with Mid-South Baseball. This will complete it. This will make everything finished, but the answer to your question is, Mr. Gilbert, this is an additional $9,000 to the original project.
Have we paid Mid-South money?
We agreed.
How can we do business with them if we don't have a contract with them and pay them money if we don't have some sort of agreement with them?
Well, you know what, Mr. Gilbert, that's a great point.
That's a good question.
But I can't really. That's a great question, and frankly, I don't know how it was done in the past. All I know is that from this point forward, we need to have contracts. And because what happened in this case is there was clearly a misunderstanding between the parties at the time in terms of what would be accomplished with the money. On the corporation side of the ledger, we felt that the dollar amount would complete the project fully, without question. But clearly, on the other side of the ledger, that individual, Mid-South, felt, no, that was not the complete package. So there was a negotiation entered into that greatly reduced any additional costs. And I directed that a contract be entered into to make sure that the work to be completed would be in fact completed. It would finish the project, and we would hold them to a standard of quality so that we wouldn't have to go back and revisit this again. So that's sort of the nature of this situation.
Ernie, I had the same question you had, and I think it's almost the one they got us once, but it won't happen twice. Because I do remember the same meeting where we had the figures, and you questioned how much Charlestown was going to pay out of that even. But we didn't have a contract accompanying that. I went back and looked as far as I could too, and I didn't see one ever appear.
There was not a contract, and the problem is the work that is being completed has been signed off, Mr. Gilbert. I have held the check for Mid-South. I've held on to it now for probably about 6 weeks as we've worked through and negotiated and renegotiated this. Like I said, this estimate originally was twice what we're bringing here. It was almost $20,000. We've been able to rework that. They've been a pretty good partner. They feel like that they made it very clear to us that when they did this work, the base paths were going to be lower and that this was going to be an additional expense. That's the best explanation I can give the board. Clearly, it's not going to happen again. That's why, as Dr. Mellon said, we're bringing forward the contract at this time. The answer to your question is the board has approved the claim and the check has been written, but we have not given it to Mid-South at this time. But we're going to need to do that within the near future.
The key for me, our kids have been playing at the Little League field for 3 years. This work will be completed by November 30th. And our kids will be able to play on their home fields this spring.
That's correct. What the board approved was an invoice or an estimate. And if you go back and look at that original estimate, and I don't have it in front of me, all of this work that we're now paying for was listed on there, but it was listed as zero.
Other questions or discussion?
I think that it's important for this board to realize we've been as disappointed as you are, and we've entered in some pretty healthy conversations with Mid-South, that we really felt like that they were going to come forward and make this field, both fields, playable. And that was the understanding. We were going to invest this money, both fields would be playable, and our kids could play on the field. And lo and behold, the work gets done, and we kind of get caught up in some of the paperwork, and we just, quite honestly, we don't have a leg to stand on. We've held this check as long as we can. We've worked with them. I think we've made as much headway as we can.
I really appreciate, Mr. Hare has done a tremendous job sort of picking this situation up. He was not involved in the initial phase of any of this, and I've asked him to step in and help us out, and he's worked very hard to come up to where we are today. And the only thing that I wanted to make sure happened is that we had something in writing that verified that the work would be complete, the project would be complete, and there would be a warranty so that the quality of the project would be sufficient. So I think that's what this written agreement will do for us. It protects our interests from future issues.
And Travis, they will not receive this additional $9,000 until the work's completed?
Certainly. Until we execute this contract, absolutely.
Travis, I have just one question.
Now, that's a different question. What she asked, I think, is
November
the 3rd.
November 30th is the completion
is
date.
Supposed to be completed. And is that when you'll send them this $9,000 check that you're holding, or once we sign a contract with them for how much of a check are you holding right now for them?
It's $36,000 or $38,000.
Okay,
the
big
first
one.
amount, the big one.
The first.
Okay.
The first one, and I would expect we would send this once this contract is completed on November the 30th.
Okay.
But the other stipulation is that it's going to be fully usable. We want the work done because some of this work, if it's done in spring, it's going to be too late, and we're going to miss a whole other year. So this work has to be done in the fall with the understanding that they will come back in the spring to make sure that it's playable, and that's what this contract is saying. You
I
wrote
think
the contract.
didn't we agree that upon their signing the contract, we would release the $38,000 check to them. Then, once they completed the work and the project was completed, and Mr. Hare goes and verifies that the work is done satisfactorily, then at that point in time, then we could release the $9,000 because there's a warranty built into the contract that would help protect us in the future. But once the work is completed, the project we believe is fully completed, then they would be entitled to the dollars, just like in any other business arrangement.
Well, once they get the $36,000, they can go nah.
That's for the work they already did.
Huh?
That's for the work they've already done.
I know it, but they've not done the rest of the work, and so they get that 36, and they say, I'm not going to mess with you guys anymore.
Well, then they lose
I'm not-
$9,000.
But we'll have a written
Then they lose $9,000.
No, but they're not going to do any work for that
Okay.
$9,000 because they won't do the work. Once they get to 36, they can say, I'm not messing with you guys anymore. Go get somebody else.
Won't
But
they
we
be
have-
bound
if
by
you
the
hold the
contract to
money-
do the work?
We have an enforceable contract at that point. We could at least say you signed this contract before we release the check, correct?
See, I think the other thing we need to make clear here is, for everyone, please, I think that the key factor is this. The quality of the work that Mid-South has done, the $38,000 or whatever, the quality of their work that they've done has been good. There was a misunderstanding in language. So the people who were working on this project before we ever got involved, there was a misunderstanding in relationship to the scope of the project. So where we felt that it would be completed, the $38,000 would pay for the full project, Mid-South had a different interpretation. So we're not questioning the quality of their work. We need to make sure there was a full understanding of where we were in relationship to the project. And after a lot of negotiation, this compromise was reached. And the compromise, we believe is fair. The written contract that we'll put in place enforces an obligation on the part of their business, and they'll get paid the $36,000 or $38,000 that they've not been paid for 6 weeks. They have another $9,000 that they'll be entitled to upon completion of this rest of the project. And then they're held to the quality of the field as we go into next year. And they know that.
Well, when I built houses, every once in a while somebody would come and they would do a job, and they would do a pretty good job of it, and they'd have a little bit of work left to do, and they say, well, I need part of the money, I need a draw or whatever it is. Say it was $10,000 worth of work, and they'd say that they'd like to have $9,000, and I bet that much. So I give them $9,000. They've got $1,000 work they're supposed to do. They don't show back up. And the $9,000 work, the $1,000 work that's left, takes me $2,000 to get done because I have to pick up and pay those back in. So they can say, once this is gone, once they've got their money, they can say, thank you very much, we're going through all this other stuff. Sue them. I guess we could sue them, but again, we have a situation now where they could sue us or we could sue them anyway, because our feelings were that this job was to be completed. And so we have a misunderstanding of what's there, and if they want to go through those things, then there's the misunderstanding part. I thought it meant this. They thought it meant this. There's a misunderstanding. You work through it and you get this taken care of. But if somebody is not going to be responsible enough to work through this, did they cut any deals in this thing here? Is the $9,000 extra? Is that what they thought they wanted all the way along, or did they want 18 and
Yeah, they wanted 18 originally, and additionally
for this part of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Gilbert, I agree with everything you said, but when it comes down to what he said,
well, you always
he said
hold money. We're always supposed to hold money on construction. Okay. And so if they've got this done, we ought to hold some money. Maybe not hold. Maybe give them most of the 36, give them 30 of it or whatever, and hold some to make sure that they do the other 9,000 what it's supposed to do, and then give them 15. But in operations like this, you just can't continue to do stuff like that. And maybe this just a matter of misunderstanding. If it is, they ought to be able to work around the misunderstanding and say, this is reasonable. When you get it all done, we'll do this. But they may not get it done November the 30th, and we're still out with them.
You see, I think that the issue is we believe that there's a misunderstanding. We don't believe that we look at the work and the quality of the work is poor. See, to me, it's a different scenario. If we had a check for $38,000 to do this work and the work was terrible, that's a different scenario. They did a level of work and they did it with quality. Here's the issue. They thought that the work they did was for $38,000. We feel that, wait a minute, you needed to raise the level of the infield to match the grass now that's growing there. It's too big for baseball. It's dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there was a misunderstanding, and so I think that it's important. It's not the quality; it's a misunderstanding.
Well, it is to an extent, because in reality they wanted $20,000 more dollars. They wanted $56,000 instead of 36. So where we thought this was a good deal at 38 or 36 that they did nice work. Is it good enough work at 56 or 58? And I don't know if it is or it isn't, because that wasn't figured into the deal. To me, you don't pay people unless they've completed the job. The job isn't completed. Don't pay them. Pay them a portion of it. They've got investment in time and money, so give them some, but hold money back and go through that just like you would any other business. We've got people. We still have, I don't know. We've not cleaned up all the money from our construction jobs, have we? Where we're holding money back on people for these times. I don't know, but we were holding money on a lot of people, and we were working toward trying to get those people off the checklist and back into this because we hold money for them, and we ought to hold money on this job as well, because it's we thought it included the whole job. They said it didn't. We're being reasonable. Said okay. We'll pay the extra $9,000 as an overage, but we're still going to hold money because this job isn't completed based on what we thought we did.
As much as I appreciate it, I want to call for a vote, please, because I'd like to see the kids play baseball soon.
Well, you're not getting any guarantee that that's going to happen.
Yeah, there's a guarantee, because now we're going to have a contract, whereas the last time we didn't have a contract, and that's the problem.
Guarantees and contracts don't mean anything a whole lot more than what they did.
Then they don't get paid.
They don't have to do the work. They won't. They're going to get $36,000.
Travis, this is a pretty reputable company, right? I mean, they do business around here. This is not a guy that.
It's one of the ones, and he's worked with us. I mean, and quite honestly, he's done the work that he agreed to do.
I mean, we can.
And it's good work.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the question's been called for. So if Ms. Christensen or Mr. White or Mr. Pavey have anything further. Because y'all haven't spoke.
Well, I'm a little concerned, like Ernie is. I I realize we'll have a contract, but I'm a little concerned that when we release this as a $38,000, they've already negotiated down to $9,000 from 18. I'm depending a lot here on how reputable this company is, because, and I'm not questioning the company, I don't know the company, but, you know, some companies would say, well, I've already cut it in half and we'll walk away from it, or I'm not going to complete it. Others would complain. So that's a little bit of concern to me, too. Who, I know you didn't, you weren't here, Dr. Mellon, and you're, Travis, you're thrown into it right now. Who originally worked this negotiation with them?
Somebody with the prior administration.
Okay.
And there was not a contract.
Yeah, I know it wasn't a contract.
And it's,
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Figured it was.
home plate and pitcher's mound.
I think that the one thing that's universal through this discussion is that everyone's very frustrated by it. So what I'm asking the board is to trust the fact that we've identified the issue. We feel like we've worked very hard to resolve the issue, to make it right, and so that we're ready to go on it. And we feel like we've reached an understanding with the individual involved on the other side. It is a reputable firm. They've done quality work with the work they've done. We think it's a genuine misunderstanding. It was something that, should have been done differently in terms of the whole process. Absolutely. We can't go back and change that, but what we can do is try to protect our interests from this point forward. And I think that we've done that in this case. So no one's happy about any of this, but it does have to get done. And we feel like we've worked hard and we've come up to a level of compromise that is satisfactory on the part of our school corporation. And so I'd ask for your support, I guess.
So am I to understand that you can hold that check legally until November 30th?
I don't think so. I mean, they
No.
I just did
They've
it
done
as
the work.
leverage tool. They've done the work. I've done it as a leverage to try to get this down. I mean, they've done the work, and it's good work.
Well, I'm
They
kind of
do good
concerned
work.
because I know of at least 3 board members that was up there looking at that field, working with the administrative team and the community themselves. There were many emails that came to this board about this issue. And we all heard the prior superintendent say, this is how much it's going to take and this is going to be over. And then we find that it's not. I mean, there's a lot of heads on this one, and we are sure we're wrong.
I can stand before you and say it's everything that I've been given, I'm 100% telling you that I'm for sure. This board did not approve a contract with Mid-South. The work that they bid and did, it's been done, it's been well done, and they deserve the compensation. I don't know how else.
This contract is... But
Madam President, I do want the kids to be able to play ball in the spring. At the end of the day, that's...
Yep. Safely.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
So I can't say anything else.
You called for the question?
No, you said I can't say anything else.
All in favor? And opposed? All right. Thank you all for the lively discussion. Moving forward, we're going to have contracts. Correct, Dr. Mellon?
Yes, ma'am.
2013 graduation dates.
Board, I would hope that this is pretty straightforward. These dates that have been designated, I think are pretty consistent with what was done last year. And so we're talking about graduation for Jeff High, the commencement, I should say, would be at 7 o'clock on May 24th, New Washington High, 10 a.m. on the 25th, and Charlestown High, 1 p.m. on the 25th. And you can see that there are proposed snow makeups if absolutely necessary, but let's hope that that's not the case. But hopefully this should mirror pretty much, I think, what was done last year, at least to the best of my knowledge. So I ask for your approval so people can plan accordingly.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any discussion?
I'm happy.
And I figured you would be. All in favor? Thank you. And finally, 2013 renewal for health insurance.
Board, you've received a lot of documentation. I want to thank Mr. Hare, Mrs. Lewis, Mr. Deichel, our Mrs. Mullins. Every year we come back around to an insurance renewal phase. We worked with our Teachers Association as well. There's an insurance committee that is made up of people from the Teachers Association as well as our central office staff. And the bottom line is that after a lot of work, we are bringing forth a renewal for insurance premium. It will reflect a 10% increase over expected in 2012. It's about a $900,000 additional cost, and we're asking for you to approve it. All the other programs related to it stay in place with all the current deductibles and so on. And what we're doing that's a little bit unique is we are wanting to use our insurance reserves to pay for the increase. The reason that's important is because under the new negotiated agreement, 60% of any increase is borne by the school corporation and 40% by the employees. Well, from a school corporation perspective, we are already facing a big deficit of well over $2 million. So this would be about $540,000 additional dollars added to our deficit. We can use our insurance reserve funds, which are relatively healthy at this point, in order to make this happen. And from an employee perspective, there would be a holiday, a premium holiday, sometime during 2013. And so the additional cost factors would not be borne by them as well. So we think this is a good move at this point and the best move. It's a short-term solution. We need to work harder on a long-term fix as relates to health costs. So I ask you to approve the renewal as presented.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Pavey. Is there a second? Mr. Satterley, thank you. Any discussion or questions?
Basically, we have worked really hard to try to keep this under control, and it's greatly appreciated the cooperation that we got from the teachers who are part of the money on the non-reverting fund to participate with us. That was how we did this. Was why we set it up, and hopefully it will continue to be a very, very viable way of doing business, and it's greatly appreciated from the support that we have from the teachers who are the other people who are involved in this besides the school corporation itself in administering the non-reverting fund to help us get through this thing, and we'll continue to work hard to try to build back up our balances and work our way through this. And so thanks to you guys back there. We really appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, also like to mirror that. I don't know that it was a partnership between the GCEA and Greater Clark, excuse me, administration. Some tough decisions, but I appreciate you all partnering, and let's get through this. And as Ernie said, we're going to work hard, try to get those reserves built back up. So,
anything further?
Yes.
Just for the record, also as part of this recommendation is the voluntary dental plan and also the voluntary life insurance. So just as a matter of record, if we could include that into the, clearly it says it on here, but just if we could include that in the record, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is to approve the health, dental, and life renewals. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. Mr. Gilbert, do you have a report or a request?
No, thank you.
Ms. Christensen?
No.
Mr. White?
No, thank you.
Mr. Satterley?
No.
Mr. Pavey?
Nothing.
All right. No public comments on non-agenda, so then, Mr. Gilbert, do you have a comment?
Thanks for everyone for showing up. Like always, it's good to have the community here. It must be we've got less than what we usually do. I don't know what we've done to run off some people, but we always appreciate everyone showing up. And part of the discussion that we had tonight has to do with you people who show up, that you have a right to voice your opinion, and we limit you in certain ways, but in certain ways that you should have an opportunity to say something. And so hopefully we have worked through some policy situations that handled it, and then other things that were reflections of previous decisions that were made, and we're, they're there. We have to live with them, do the best we can, I suppose.
Ms. Christensen.
I'd like to welcome the students in the back of the room. It's great to see you out there. I know you didn't think so, but we appreciate seeing you out there. And I just wanted to say, I believe almost every one of us got to Jeffersonville High School to see the school play this weekend, including Dr. Mellon. I heard you enjoyed it too.
Absolutely.
What an outstanding group of individuals over there in the drama department, and the teachers and the parents that help. And it was just an outstanding afternoon for us, so thank you.
I want to again recognize Cindy Ryan. It's wonderful to have people like that in our corporation, so I really want to recognize her and the wonderful partnership that Southeast Christian has created, particularly with Parkwood out there. And it's just wonderful that the bond that has taken place between that school and that church. So thank them. Thank you all for coming.
Mr. Satterley?
No comments.
Mr. Pavey?
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Mellon for hosting a strategic planning meeting this week. Had a great turnout for 7 o'clock in the morning, about 70 to 80 people I would probably estimate. These are educators, these are administrators, these are people in the business world, all coming together for one common goal, is to try to bring a strategic plan to the corporation, and I very much appreciate the participation, and I look forward to additional sessions. So, thank you.
And also, Travis, Sandy, and Amy all hosted SWOT analysis.
They did.
And Aaron.
They
Thank
did great,
you all very
great
much.
board work, by the way.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And the students, if you all need us to sign off for you, I know some of you are probably here for your government credit. Make sure and just come and see us after the meeting. Be glad to sign off on those for you. At the next board meeting, we'll be giving a board report. Mr. White, Mr. Pavey, myself, Dr. Mellon, Travis, and Sandy all attended the ISBA IAPSS conference. And so we'll be giving you a report on things that we learned from that, and things that we can use moving forward. Dr. Mellon.
Just a couple quick comments. First of all, this Friday, will mark the end of the first 9 weeks, which is hard to believe, but we're at that point. So we're at the end of the first marking period, and so a full week of fall break will occur next week. Want to congratulate Coach Hawkins, Charlestown football coach, recognized by the Indianapolis Colts organization as Coach of the Month, and been through that process associated with that situation in the past. It's an outstanding honor for Coach Hawkins, for that football program. They obviously have an outstanding season, but there are a lot of other schools around the state having outstanding seasons. And so for Charlestown to be recognized at that level is outstanding. I think there's going to be a special recognition at 8 a.m. this Friday at, my fault, I'm sorry, thank you, 8 a.m. tomorrow at Charlestown in the gymnasium. Is that correct, high school gym? So that's nice. Great thing for him.
Do you know which player they're sending down?
They're sending a gentleman by the name, if I remember correctly, his name is Mike Pryor. Mike Pryor played for the Colts and also played for the Green Bay Packers in his career. Nice gentleman, and so he'll be down. And they also, I want to recognize the Jeffersonville High School baseball program. They had their alumni event, alumni baseball game on Saturday. It was very well attended, and a lot of great people from our past, from the past greats from Jeffersonville High School baseball. So that was an outstanding big event. Went really well, very positive. So just want to make everyone aware of that as well.
Madam President, could I have 2 more minutes because he reminded me of something? Thank you to Dr. Millen and Steve Hopsgood, who's going to get my thanks, but it reminds me that this weekend the Greater Clark County Schools is partnering with the Jeffersonville Parks Department for the 75th anniversary of the field house and talk about an alumni game. Come out and see the basketball. It's going to have a sock hop. It's going to have tours of the old high school, and thank you so much, Dr. Millen, for all your help with that.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pavey. All in favor? Good night.